Before we begin, I'm trying to reach 10,000 subscribers before the end of the year to make all these special videos, so if you like the content here, please consider subscribing to help fulfill Project 10K. Thank you. Now on to the video. One of my favorite things about the Cars Diecast line are the re-releases. The fact that every year's lineup features not only brand new cars, but also old favorites returning so that collectors and kids alike can add them to their collection if they missed out on them the first time. I think it's a really great strategy, one that honestly I think more toy lines should adopt. It's so cool to see every single year what older Cars Diecasts will be returning. And while I think we've had pretty great re-releases over the last few years, I will say there are several Cars characters and diecasts and diecast variants that I feel are desperately missing from the Cars Diecast line right now. So in today's video, I want to focus on some of those. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video, into another list video here on the channel. Today, I'm going to be counting down my top 10 re-releases that I think we desperately need to see in the Cars Diecast line at some point in the near future. The point of this list is to talk about significant or notable items, characters, or character variants that have been missing from the Cars Diecast line for several years. While I could simply fill this list up with rare cars like race damage mood springs that have only come out once, I only want to focus on cars that I think desperately need a re-release because they were significant to the movies or the Cars series in some way. This list will be full of characters that you may not have realized haven't been out in a very long time, despite being pretty notable in the Cars series. That's the point of this video. I'm trying to be as realistic as possible with items that I think the Cars Diecast line is kind of in an awkward spot without. So, without further ado, let's start off with number 10. And of course, as always, feel free to let me know what re-releases you think are desperately missing from the Cars Diecast line down in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Who knows, maybe if I get enough good responses, I'll do a part 2, or I'll do a version going over what you guys think. Let's get started with number 10. At spot number 10, we have a tie between the fabulous Hudson Hornet and the fabulous Hudson Hornet with headset, last released in 2016 and 2015 respectively. It's been a long time since we've seen either of these variants of Doc, despite both of them being incredibly integral to the character and who he is and the plot of the first Cars movie overall. But the reason why I only put them at spot number 10 and not higher up on the list is because of this guy right here. This is the Dirt Track Fabulous Hudson Hornet. First released in 2017, it's based on Cars 3 and the Doc racing flashbacks we see in the movie. It's simply a variant of the Fabulous Hudson Hornet that features dirt decals on the side, a lot of dirt detailing on him. And yes, my Hudson Hornet is the original with the white wheels. They're completely inaccurate to the movie. They're the wheels Doc wears when he's not racing. Later releases fix them to red, but I don't have a later release. Anyway, this item has become the only Fabulous Hudson Hornet item to be released in the Cars Diecast line since Cars 3 came out, with the exception of some color changers, but we're not counting those here, of course. This Doc has come out consistently once every few years. We've gotten him a few years back to back, and he's basically replaced this guy right here, and I think that's honestly a shame. While I really like the Dirt Track Fabulous Hudson Hornet, I really think that we need to see the regular one return someday so that new collectors and kids can get a version of Doc that doesn't have that dirt detailing on him, and also a variant of the Hudson Hornet based on the first Cars movie instead of Cars 3. Additionally, I think we really need the headset variant. We haven't seen him since 2015 when he came with that incredible pit crew stand. Other than that, I believe he's only had 2 regular single releases in 2008 and 2009. We got Mater with Sign out this year. It was really a shame they didn't do more Cars 1 McQueen pit crew members. I think the Hudson Hornet with headset really needs to come out again. He's such a significant part of the finale of the first Cars movie and is such a big part of the legacy of Doc Hudson as a character. Going almost a decade without this guy in the toy line is crazy. At spot number 9, we have Ryan Shields. Since the release of Cars 3, Mattel has been consistently re-releasing racers from the first Cars movie, and now they only have 2 left to make, that they legally can make, that is. Those being Eugene Karbareski and Ernie Gearson. Ernie was recently confirmed to get a 2025 re-release, and I doubt Eugene is that far behind, but I've seen many Cars fans clamoring for them to re-release another character, Ryan Shields. Now, Ryan Shields was actually last released in 2018, after the release of Cars 3, just like all of these other guys. But his case infamously skipped over the US, meaning that many collectors who wanted to get Ryan Shields then, myself included, were not able to get him. So, I oftentimes see fans group Ryan in with the Piston Cup racers that are missing right now, and while we technically have gotten him post Cars 3, it really would be great to get him again so that people who missed out on him in 2018 when he didn't hit the US can finally get him. I'm sure a lot of us just have that weird metallic variant of him they did, for whatever reason, in 2019. Yeah. I decided to include Ryan Shields on the list and not Eugene Carbureski because I think it's only a matter of time for Eugene. It's very clear that they intend to do all the Piston Cup cars, and now he's the only one left. I definitely think that we could probably see him in 2025. We'll have to see. But when it comes to Ryan Shields, I'm far less confident that we'll get him anytime soon because, again, they did re-release him back in 2018. But hopefully he just ends up as part of a future year's Piston Cup assortment. I think that would really be great for those of us who missed out on him. At spot number 8, we have Bob Cutlass and Daryl Cartrip. These two were both last seen in 2021, and while that isn't that long ago, they're two items that I'm surprised we don't get in the Cars Diecast line more frequently. They're both pretty notable characters throughout the Cars series, being the two that commentate over every Piston Cup race. And the fact that we only get them every 3 or 4 years is something that I find really strange. I think they should definitely be released more often, just due to their significance. I'm sure a lot of kids would want to have these two to commentate over races. As somebody who makes a Cars series, I find myself using Daryl and Bob all the time in different video projects. They really come in handy when you need somebody to do the announcing. Now, Bob Cutlass actually got a new variant in 2019. This is his Cars 3 variant. We haven't seen the regular Cars 1 Bob Cutlass variant since 2017, which was the last time we saw Daryl before he returned in 2021. Honestly, I don't really mind if they stick with this Bob Cutlass. I know I said with Doc, I wish that they did the Cars 1 variant and the Cars 3 variant, but with Bob, this original color scheme isn't accurate. This color scheme is a little more accurate, I guess, kind of. Instead of just re-releasing this Bob Cutlass, I hope that they do a new variant based on the first movie with a more accurate color scheme, because this variant's based on Cars 3 and has that RSN logo. So, yeah, instead of just re-releasing Bob like a Cars 1 Bob, that's a bit more accurate, which I guess in terms of the Cars Diecast line, they would consider just a re-release of regular Bob, just with an updated color scheme. Regardless, I really think these two need to be released a bit more frequently than we see them right now. If they're not out in 2025, I think it'll be a pretty big missed opportunity. It's weird to go so many years without them being out again and again and again. Then again, I guess it's not as bad as the World Grand Prix commentators who haven't been out since like 2016, 2017. Bring those guys back too. In 7th place, we have Rip Klutchgonski, the least frequently released of the World Grand Prix racers. We haven't seen him since 2020, and I desperately need a replacement for mine. Yeah, well, my Rip has had this embarrassing giant dent on his front, and man, we really need to see him back. Rip Klutchgonski was made in the first ever Made in Thailand wave, and because of that, you can see he doesn't look as good as he should. The original Rip Diecast's colors were never all that accurate, but the Thailand variant certainly didn't help. I really hope that we could see Rip return at some point soon with a more accurate color scheme, finally fixing his inaccurate color scheme he's had on both of his previous variants. I think with Rip, it's obviously only a matter of time. We get several World Grand Prix racers every year. We used to get nearly all of them in the main line annually. For the past few years, we've been getting a few in the main line, and then several in multi-packs. And I really hope that we'll see Rip Klutchgonski come back in 2025. Going 5 years without releasing one of the World Grand Prix racers is kind of crazy when you take into account that they're usually annual releases. And when it comes to Rip, I know he's got a lot of fans, and I'd love to see him back on store shelves. I'd also love to see that awful dent fixed, or I guess replaced. I don't know what I'd do with this if I got a new Rip. Probably just repaint it. Then again, if I repaint it, you'd still be able to see that giant dent through the paint I use. So maybe we'll just act like he doesn't exist. Up next, Rod Torque Redline. Rod Torque Redline was only ever released in the Cars Diecast line in the 2011 and 2012 Cars 2 line, despite being a pretty significant character in the opening scenes of Cars 2. The Cars Diecast line has recently begun to really embrace all of the weird spy stuff in Cars 2 after avoiding it for quite a few years. Nowadays, Finn and Holly are nearly annual releases, and just last year we finally saw some Lemons return to the Cars Diecast line for the first time in years. I think Rod here is in desperate need for a re-release. He's only ever been out in that initial Cars 2 lineup. He really needs to come back. I'm sure some people may argue, oh, they wouldn't bring him back because the character is dead, but I don't really think that's what's preventing them. I don't know if anything's preventing them. They just haven't chosen to bring back Rod Torque Redline, and this guy really has to come back. He's one of my favorite Cars Diecasts ever, quite frankly. One of the coolest designs they've ever done for a character, and I would love to see what he looks like with a Thailand variant. Would probably be pretty cool. Maybe they could even do some updates with him. I think that'd be sick. In my opinion, Mattel had the perfect opportunity to release Rod when they did a Tokyo Party series in the main line back in 2015, and the fact that they didn't release him then still baffles me to this day. Rod has to come back. Please, just hear me out, Mattel. Just bring back Rod Torque Redline, please, please. Look, he's on my background. I named a whole Cars fan film after him when I was 14. It wasn't very good, but I like Rod Redline. Bring him back, please. Last year, the Lemons from Cars 2 finally returned to the Cars Diecast line, but unfortunately, so far they've only done Vladimir Trunkov and Tubbs Pacer. And if we don't get Gremlin Acer soon, I'll honestly be shocked. It might surprise you to hear how long it's been since we've gotten regular Gremlin Acer. Acer's regular variant was last released in the 2015 Tokyo Party series, and Grem's regular variant was last released in the 2011-2012 Cars 2 Diecast line. Yikes. It's been a while for these guys. But it's not as bad as Rod, as Grem and Acer both received several variants in 2013, 14, 15, and 16, which basically took the place of their normal variants in the Diecast line. We were getting new Grem and Acers basically every year, so they just didn't re-release the regular ones most years, with the exception of a regular Acer who was able to sneak through the cracks and come back in 2015. That's why it's honestly surprising to me that it's been so long. I distinctly remember so many different Grem and Acer variants back in the day that I completely forgot the fact that they never really redid the original two, again, except for that regular Acer. I have a feeling that a regular Grem and Acer will certainly be in the pipeline for the Cars Diecast line pretty soon. I think they've got to come out at some point very soon. The fact that they brought back the Lemons and didn't do Grem and Acer is really, really crazy to me. Although I certainly don't mind them doing background Lemons again. It would be really great to see these two. There were no Lemons in the 2024 Cars Diecast line, despite the fact that 2023 brought them back, and that makes me nervous for 2025, but only time will tell. We'll have to see, and here's hoping that if they do more Lemons next year, these two are among their ranks. But in my opinion, easily the most desperately missing Cars 2 diecast is Professor Z, who, much like Rod Torque Redline and Grem before him, has not seen the light of day in the Cars Diecast line since the 2011 and 2012 Cars 2 line. At least Grem got new variants. Professor Z has the exact same story as Rod Redline, where we haven't seen any variants of him since his first release. They were nice enough to give him a mini racer last year, which I'm sure several people probably bought to substitute the fact that they didn't have a Professor Z. That's fully what my theory was when he came out. I remember saying in my review, so many people are going to get this mini of Professor Z because he's so close to the regular one, because really, how do you make a mini of this guy, right? So at the very least, Mattel has made a Professor Z for us recently, but not a re-release of his regular variant in the regular old diecast line. And honestly, it's really a shame, and it's really shocking. We've gotten several Miles Axelrod variants released over the past few years. To do 3 Miles Axelrods in 2022 and 2023, and not a single Professor Z is a baffling choice in my opinion. He is easily the main villain of Cars 2. until Miles Axelrod is revealed in the last 5 minutes to be the villain. So to give Miles Axelrod so much love recently and give nothing to Professor Z, I mean, look at how angry he is. This is the face you make when you haven't been seen in a toy line for over a decade, despite being the main antagonist of a movie. Poor guy. At spot number 3, we have what is easily the most requested diecast to return right now, or I guess diecasts. Because in this spot on the list, we have any of the Cars 3 veterans. Literally any of them. These guys used to be a staple of the Cars diecast line, being released alongside Cars 1 racers and the next gens, but we haven't really seen any since 2022, with the exception of Cal Weathers and Bobby Swift, who returned in one of those Walmart accessory 2-packs. People have been desperately clamoring for these items to return, to the point where, in the fan base, they've really become more popular than the next gens. So many of these items are cars we haven't seen in years. Rev Rotages comes to mind, Marcus Cranksler, Cars 3 Ernie Gearson. So many great items here that really, really desperately need another release out there. I'm lucky enough to own most of the Cars 3 veterans. I know a lot of people who have very few and really want to get some more, and unfortunately, despite being one of the main 3 groups of racers in the Piston Cup across the car series, we haven't been getting them recently. I'd love to see them return, any of them, because I know people really want them. I'm missing a few, like TG Castlenut, Lane Lock, and Bobby Rotesta. I'd love to be able to complete my collection, but yeah, another group of cars that really, really, really need to return. Bring these guys back to being annual releases. The fact that they're not is honestly kind of crazy, and it's sad, because the story of these racers in Cars 3 is the fact that they get replaced by the next gens, and now in the Cars diecast line, they've kind of awkwardly faded away. Here's hoping they make a grand return soon. I'm sure that they won't be forgotten about. We're just going through a few years where we don't have them. At spot number 2, we have Dinoco Lightning McQueen. Last released in the Lightning McQueen boxes in 2018, those had a pretty limited run. His last release in the regular Cars diecast main line was all the way back in 2015 in the Dinoco series. And the fact that it's been almost a decade since we've seen regular Dinoco McQueen in the main line is insane, and it's been 6 years since he's been released in general. Dinoco Lightning McQueen might not have that much screen time, but he's here at number 2 on the list for a reason. This is an iconic Lightning McQueen paint job, probably the second most famous one from the first Cars movie behind the regular classic red Lightning McQueen. Dinoco McQueen used to be an annual release in the Cars diecast line back in its earlier years. In fact, Dinoco Lightning McQueen was one of the first ever character variants the diecast line had, being the second single variant of McQueen available, and the third McQueen diecast ever made behind regular McQueen and Dirt Track McQueen. The fact that they haven't released regular Dinoco McQueen since before Cars 3, with the exception of one of the McQueen boxes, of course, is baffling to me. This is one of the most well-known McQueen paint jobs out there, and I still can't believe we haven't gotten him. Now, Bling Bling McQueen was lucky enough to return back in 2022, and he'll be returning in 2025, and ironically, they've decided to re-release the Bling Bling McQueen variant, where his eyes are looking forward and are the same as Dinoco McQueen, instead of the other variant where his eyes are looking off to the side. So, at the very least, we have something close enough. If you really want to, you could dismantle him and put, the wheels from this McQueen on him and basically have a pseudo Thailand Dinoco McQueen. But we really, really need this as an item, not just Bling Bling McQueen. And while we're on the subject, I'd love to see the Bling Bling McQueen looking off to the side coming back. I would love to see that as well. Again, like I said earlier, Bling Bling McQueen is returning for 2025. Hopefully that doesn't rule out regular Dinoco McQueen, because it's really beyond about time we get this guy. And just look at how great the Thailand Bling Bling McQueen looks. I absolutely love the shade of blue they used for Dinoco cars in Thailand. Look at how amazing he could look. Hopefully when they bring him back, they also finally add the Dinoco logo that's always been missing from his spoiler. I cannot wait to see the day that Dinoco McQueen returns to the diecast line. I only have one honorable mention for this list. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'd love to do a part 2 for this video if you guys are interested. If it does well, I'll definitely do a part 2. I have plenty of other ideas that didn't make the cut. I almost made this video a top 20, actually, because there were so many cars I wanted to talk about. So for now, I'm just going to talk about one honorable mention, that being Regular Flo. Now, Regular Flo is an honorable mention because I don't think she really fully qualifies for the list. We've gotten Regular Flo released pretty much annually in the Cars Diecast line forever and always, with the exception of those Cars 2 only years we didn't get her back then. But Flo is always released. She's out every single year. But the reason why I considered her for this list is because we actually haven't gotten her as a single since 2021. In 2022, 23, and 24, she has only been out in 2-packs, and I think it's about time that Regular Flo is released as a single again. Like a day after I made this original list, it got revealed that Flo with Trey will be released as a single in 2025, and her packaging actually just calls her Flo and uses like the Regular Flo artwork and stuff. So I guess that's a step in the right direction. It's great to see Flo with Trey again. But, you know, I really hope that we get Regular Flo as a single again at some point soon. It's weird to have one of the main characters forever trapped in the cycle of 2-packs. Even if she's with Ramon, I'm sure they're very happy in those 2-packs together. But still, really think we should get Regular Flo as a single again someday soon. And finally, at spot number 1, we have Junior Moon, River Scott, and Joe Don Jackson. I'm kidding, of course. It's Luis Nash. Obviously. These 3 characters play a pretty significant role in Cars 3. They're 3 old racers who are friends with Smokey and used to know Doc, and we spend quite a bit of time with them in the movie. And while we've seen plenty of characters on this list that are significant in their movie of origin and haven't been out in a very long time, I chose these 3 in particular because, well, number 1, we haven't seen any of their normal variants since 2017. But in addition to that, they were released at the tail end of 2017, were barely in any waves, and were incredibly hard to find in stores, and now they're all pretty expensive online. Items like Rod, Grem, and Acer aren't all that hard to pick up. I haven't really checked in a while, but when I last did, they weren't really all that expensive. They were pretty readily available. These 3 certainly were not. I actually never found Luis Nash in a store, and I only saw Junior and River in a Toys R Us one time back in late 2017 before Toys R Us shut down over here. Now, these 3 have kind of gotten the Grem and Acer treatment, where we've seen several variants of them released in more recent years, like their Hot Rod variants and Heyday variants for River and Junior. But the fact that we haven't gotten their regular variants and we keep getting these other variants is something that really bothers me. I think we really need to see those normal variants of them, especially Luis. You know, Luis doesn't really have a Heyday variant. There's a variant of her from an old 4-pack that's kind of like a Heyday variant, but considering the fact that they have 2 other types of Rivers and Juniors to re-release as singles, and just Luis and the Flame version of Luis, we really need to see these 3 return to the Diecast line. In my opinion, having 3 of the most prominent new characters introduced in Cars 3 only released the year Cars 3 came out at the end of the year, and only 1 or 2 waves each, was really just such a bad decision. I understand waiting a little bit to release them, but it was so strange to not have them ever come back and then do variants and then just re-release those variants again and again. Please, Mattel, please re-release the Legends. And there you have it, guys, my list of 10 Cars Diecasts that I think desperately need re-releases. Let me know what you thought of the list in the comments, what cars you would add to your own list. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye now.